Joining us on the line to discuss the new anti-Semitism that the Democratic Party seems to be okay with is Senator Ted Cruz of Texas. Senator Cruz, welcome to the Ben Shapiro Show.
Ben, it's always good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So, Senator Cruz, let's start with this. You are doing something that I think congressional Republicans should have done a while ago, which is you're introducing a bill to condemn anti-Semitism. You're doing that in the Senate. Is it going to come up for a vote? What's the actual content of the bill?
Well, I hope that it comes up for a vote. We circulated it to every Senate office this past week. It's a straightforward bill condemning anti-Semitism, and this was prompted, number one, by the repeated anti-Semitic comments we've seen from these new freshman congresswomen, but number two, by the ridiculous paroxysms that House Democrats went into when they were unable to vote out a resolution condemning anti-Semitism, because the sad reality is too many in their party have given in to the extremes, the left-wing anti-Israel bias, the embrace of BDS, and so instead they watered it down into a general resolution disclaiming bigotry of any kind, and they listed every group they could find in it. The resolution I've introduced is straightforward. It defines anti-Semitism as a unique form of prejudice that targeted at the Jews. It identifies attacks on Jewish loyalty as a form of anti-Semitism with a long history going all the way back to the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. It identifies attacks on Jews' livelihood as a form of anti-Semitism, from land prohibition in the Middle Ages to Nazi destruction of Jewish businesses to the contemporary BDS movement. And it describes the history of American anti-Semitism. And it's one of the reasons why it is so clear to be unequivocal. My hope is the Senate will do what the House was not able to do, which is take it up and clearly and unequivocally condemn anti-Semitism.
Now, Senator Cruz, does the bill itself mention by name anybody in the Congress, or is it a general just condemnation of anti-Semitism?
So it does not mention any individual member of Congress, and I just didn't think it was appropriate for the Senate to do that. And actually, part of the reason it doesn't do that is my hope is to get it passed. And so, but what it does do is it condemns specifically the comments, the kinds of comments, the assertions of dual loyalty, the tweet that was sent about it's all about the Benjamins, which I think may well have been the most offensive of all of these comments. So it targets those kinds of aspersions without identifying a member of Congress by name.
Okay, so with that said, have you received any Democratic support? How have Democratic senators reacted to your proposal?
So we have not yet, but we just circulated it this past week, and the Senate's in recess. Everyone is back in their states right now, and so we have right now 10 Senate offices that have asked to be co-sponsors, but all of them are Republicans so far. We'll wait and see. I am not certain we will vote on it. I want to have a vote on it, and Mitch McConnell has said he plans to schedule it for a vote. So I'm hopeful that every senator have to make a choice. Where do you stand? And I think for some Senate Democrats, that may be a difficult choice, but my hope is that they do the right thing. I'd like to see this pass 100-0, but the Democrats will have to make a decision that they're willing to be unequivocal condemning anti-Semitism for that to happen.
And Senator Cruz, it is fascinating to watch as the Democratic Party pulls further and further away from Israel. They say this has nothing to do with an implicit endorsement of anti-Semitism, even though they've been watering down their principles on behalf of Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib in the House. We now know that at least 6 Democratic presidential contenders have pulled out of the American Israel Public Affairs Committee Policy Conference, which is this huge event that happens every year. It's basically just a giant gathering of pro-Israel people. Historically, everybody from every side of the political aisle, including folks like President Obama, have spoken at AIPAC regularly. Even when President Obama was pushing what I thought was an awful anti-Israel Iran bill, he was invited to and spoke at AIPAC. What do you make of the Democrats pulling out of AIPAC one after another like this?
Well, it's one of the saddest and most troubling legacies of the Obama presidency is that there used to be, for many years, a bipartisan agreement and support for Israel and for America's alliance with Israel. When Obama negotiated and pushed forward the Iranian nuclear deal, that I think was devastating, to send billions of dollars to the Ayatollah, a theocratic zealot who pledges death to Israel and death to America. Well, what happened was congressional Democrats, the Obama White House, teed up a choice between either stand with the Obama White House or stand with Israel, and virtually every congressional Democrat chose partisan Democratic politics over Israel. That legacy continues to reverberate today, and it's really a very unfortunate development. I hope we can find congressional Democrats get their voice back and be willing to stand together in support of the nation of Israel.
And so, Senator Cruz, the same Democrats who are suggesting that Ilhan Omar is in fact not anti-Semitic or Rashida Tlaib are not anti-Semitic, those same people are suggesting that President Trump is anti-Semitic, despite the fact that yesterday, the President of the United States declared that the United States' position on the Golan Heights is that it is sovereign Israeli territory. What is your take on the President's announcement about Israel's control of the Golan Heights?
Well, I think the President's announcement about the Golan Heights is incredibly important. It is something that I have been urging him to do for many months. I introduced a resolution in December of last year for Congress to recognize the Golan Heights as part of Israel. And then earlier this year, I introduced legislation to mandate that. We've been working hand in hand with the White House, with the National Security Council, with the administration, urging the President to do what he just did yesterday. I think it is a recognition of reality. The Golan Heights are unquestionably part of Israel today. But it is also a recognition of America's interest. Nobody in their right mind would want to see the Golan Heights go back to Syria, would want to see the Golan Heights controlled by Iran or Russia. And this statement, this recognition, I think is vitally important. It's my hope, by the way, that not only does the Senate vote on my resolution condemning anti-Semitism, but I also hope the Senate will take up and vote into law the legislation that I've introduced, formally recognizing the Golan Heights as part of Israel, to put into the United States Code what the President has recognized as the chief executive.
Now, Senator Cruz, I want to ask you quickly about Beto O'Rourke. So Beto O'Rourke, obviously, you ran against him. And I specifically want to ask you about your opinion now of the media treatment of Beto O'Rourke. It's been kind of astonishing to watch. So for a year, they built up Beto O'Rourke as this incredible, charismatic politician when he was running against you. Then he loses, and now he's running for the presidency, and he's too white and non-intersectional. And they've decided that he's actually an empty vessel who has no actual policy positions, that he's kind of a weirdo, and they've discovered all of his old writing suddenly. What do you feel about the media's sudden switch in time when it comes to Beto O'Rourke?
Well, look, I think the media have revealed their true colors for everyone to see. They were obvious to begin with. But when Beto was running against me, the media was in love with this man. I mean, they wrote, the profiles they wrote of him read more like fan fiction in the Rolling Stone of like teenagers enamored with a movie star. Every reporter, when writing a profile, the obligatory adjective was Kennedy-esque. I think they actually had a macro on their computer that just typed it automatically for them. And they would just, I mean, it was writing and coverage that one rarely sees, and he could do nothing wrong. There was no criticism. You want an interesting visual comparison of media bias? Take every negative article written about Beto O'Rourke in the last 2 years prior to the November election. The stack, I'd be surprised if it's even a half-inch tall if you stacked it up in paper. Take every negative article that has been written since he started entering the presidential campaign, and it's a stack, my guess is it's over a foot tall. Why? Because now you have Bernie Sanders and Kamala Harris, and you have the other Democrats sticking knives in him, and now suddenly the press will cover that criticism of him because he's running against other Democrats. And look, one of the more stunning examples is Reuters. Reuters allegedly holds itself out as a fair and objective journalistic outlet. Reuters has now admitted that a Reuters reporter had evidence that Beto had been part of this underground hacking collective, and that he may well have committed a series of felonies, including stealing phone service, which the Reuters has laid out over a certain volume as a felony with prison time. They had this in 2017. They interviewed Beto O'Rourke, the Reuters reporter, in 2017, over a year ago, where he admitted to this. And they cut a deal with him. They said, I'll tell you what, we won't publish any of it until after November 2018, after the Senate election, because, and they didn't say this, but this is obvious, because they wanted the Democrat to win. He was running against me, so of course they're not going to say anything negative. Now, all of these, bizarre fiction pieces he wrote as a kid, all of this has come out because Reuters sat on it for over a year as essentially an in-kind campaign contribution to the Beto O'Rourke for Senate campaign.
It's pretty astonishing, but Senator Cruz, at least you can take comfort in knowing that after you defeated him in his Senate race, you went to New Mexico and literally ate dirt. That's a thing that actually happened. It was in a Washington Post. So it was in a Washington Post profile of him. So, I mean, I guess that's some comfort to you.
Well, Ben, even beyond that, not only did he eat dirt, he apparently brought the dirt back to his family to feed his family dirt. Now, how exactly do you show up to your kids and say, hey, kids, guess what I brought for dinner? I mean, that's a little out there, even for a socialist.
Well, at least you ride a skateboard. That's the important thing. Senator Cruz, thanks so much for joining the Ben Shapiro Show. Really appreciate the time.